Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. How do you stop Boko Haram, which seems emboldened on this January the 14th, 1 month today, before Nigerians vote in a presidential election? With us to talk about it from Abuja, blogger and columnist for the Nigerian Daily Punch, Japhet Omojuwa. Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to former UN General Dominique Trinquant. Chad's ex-foreign minister, Ashek In Umar, is also with us, as is journalist Yomi Oni in our Paris studios. Just before the break, Yomi Oni talking about why can't Nigeria's army step up to the plate. The military's not been in power for quite a while. This is going to be, what, the fifth presidential election we've seen since the army left power. Is it just that Nigeria's army isn't what it used to be?
I would say it's not. Nigerian army is still very good, but I think the major problem we are having is the political will to prosecute this. I wouldn't call it war for the moment. I would call it insurgency. There is a very terrible lack of political will. The spokesman for the government said something now, talking about, oh, well, we're buying weapons. But I'm sorry, when did we stop buying weapons? The Nigerian army and the Nigerian military has always had one of the largest defense budgets, especially in Africa. So how come, what have we been doing with the money way back, even before the emergence of Boko Haram? How come the excuse we're now giving to the people is because, oh, America is refusing to sell weapons to us, or maybe France, or maybe Canada, or any other country?
And Dominique Trinquant, will that call for more weapons be heard? Will there be sending more weapons?
I don't know. We've got a problem first with where the money is going, the defense budget, where it's going. Soldier, general, officers, we don't know. That first point. Second point, there was an increase in the last years of the recruitment in the Nigerian army, but it was more or less a social way of treating Nigeria more than having real soldiers doing their job. That's why each time you've got Boko Haram doing something, the army is just disbanding. So there is a big problem in the training and the way the army is doing its job.
We're seeing reports, Japhet Omojuwa, from the Northeast of a real gap between officers and common soldiers, and reports that morale is low among Nigeria's army.
Yeah, from my own contacts with those on the front lines, it's the same thing. Morale is extremely low. They feel their families are not able being taken care of. They feel that they would do better if they had weapons. They are aware that the senior officers are getting richer. Some of them leave office at the top and are trying to contest for political positions. For you to contest for political position, you must have a lot of money. You must have a very, very big war chest. And these are human beings. They pay attention to the news too, so they know exactly what's going on. So the biggest issue in Nigeria's fight against terrorism is actually the morale of the Nigerian army. The morale is extremely low, and it's that feeling is totally understandable.
All right, and while the fighting has been continuing, the two front runners this Wednesday sharing a smile at a sensitization workshop on nonviolence. We can show you perhaps that picture that was tweeted by the presidential spokesperson, Reuben Abati. Yomi Oni, your reaction to that photo?
Well, it's a good idea, but it's actually coming at a very wrong time. Before we talked about a presidential election or any election whatsoever in Nigeria, we should actually be able to secure the lives of people and their properties. Now that Nigeria is actually in a tense situation, we have an election coming up. People are already, you have skirmishes here and there already. Yes, sensitization is good. But how do you sensitize people who live in Boko Haram prone areas? How do you tell them, oh, be calm, the election will go on as scheduled? Just like you rightly said, INEC chairman is saying maybe elections may not hold in those regions. Now, how do you tell those people that we are voting in your country, but you are not part of it?
Is that's further going to increase the gap between the northeast of Nigeria, the most impoverished part of the country, and the rest of the nation?
Obviously. Presently, we are talking, okay, it's very good to talk about figures. People talk about 150 people dead, 20,000, 2,000 people dead. The problem is not about the figures. The problem is about the lives that have been broken. You've got lots of people who are dead. You've got lots of people who have had to leave their regions. We have so many thousands of people as IDPs, internally displaced persons, leaving their livelihoods, leaving their homes, moving like forcefully into other parts of the country.
So should the election take place on February the 14th?
Left to me on a personal note, it's not really the best of ideas. But for the moment, we have no choice. I'm a realist in the sense that most people are fed up with the present, the incumbent, considering that everybody believes that PDP has not done much in the last 16 years. They are seeking for a change. Whether they get it or they don't get it, it's left to the people to choose. But,
all right, but that's a separate issue, whether or not you kick out the incumbent. Is, first of all, do you have the election?
Well, we have to have the election. Okay, we just have to have it. But then after the election, what happens next? That should be the next question.
All right, even though the electoral officials, again, saying they won't be taking place in parts of those 3 worst-hit states of the Northeast, any postponement would be giving in to terrorists. That's the argument advanced by the U.S. State Department.
Boko Haram has tended to, particularly around something like an election, used political issues or sensitivities to try and inflame tensions. We've seen that as one of their tactics, and that's why it's so important to move forward with the election.
Omojua, do you agree?
I totally agree, and there are many issues around that. One, if they try to postpone the elections, the current government is going to be accused of using terrorism to perpetuate itself in power. That's one. Then two, if they try to postpone the elections, a lot of people are going to be extremely angry because they feel this is a chance to make change happen. Whether they are right or not is not the question, but a lot of people genuinely feel that February 2014, 14th of February 2015, it's a chance for them to make change happen. So we found ourselves in this situation where we have to understand that things cannot be perfect. What I think is important at this point in time is to create measures that would ensure that the people in the northeast of Nigeria have a conducive enough environment to vote. Because if the elections go ahead and they don't vote, there will be legal issues when the results come out. Whoever is going to have issues, because then you will be talking about people being disenfranchised, and that would mean that the elections, yes, held in certain places, but did not hold in a very, a place that has over 3 million votes. That's a telling number. So the elections should hold, but we have to make sure that whatever we can do to make it conducive enough for those in the Northeast to vote, they have to vote, because we made it conducive enough for them to get their permanent voters cards. According to the numbers, they actually turned out to get their permanent voters card. So if they got their permanent voters cards, we should make it conducive enough for them to vote. Because if they don't vote, there's going to be a serious constitutional legal issue after that.
All right. The argument there for voting, but trying to do everything possible to get those people in the Northeast to vote. On Twitter, reactions to that photo we showed of the 2 leading candidates, incumbent Goodluck Jonathan and General Buhari. Leaders are busy posing in marches. In this case, it was a workshop preparing their next elections. All right, somebody there who thinks it wasn't the right time for that photo op. Ashek Umar. It's a tough question, this, because this election, February the 14th, if you don't stage it, you heard Japhet say it's going to pose major problems.
But I disagree on some aspect, because there is no choice now. The election has to be held. But they might worsen the situation, not because of possible feeling of disenfranchisement by some part of the population. I think that that is not very important, because for the population in the northern part of Nigeria, the most important thing is to have a government to able of addressing the root cause of the situation, and not in terms of participation in the election or not. So why I am saying that the election might worsen the situation, because they might be a dispute after the election between the two main parties contesting the victory. That is, I think the risk is here. But there is a kind of consensus between the two main parties, no matter who will be the winner. And there is, after the election, that kind of consensus, a true national commitment. I would hope setting up of a broad national government of broad national unity that include all the sections of society. I think that the most important thing in Nigeria, in Africa, it let the people feel that the government represent them and address their need, and not the process, the technical process of the election itself.
Japhet Omojuwa, the election, February the 14th, it is going to go ahead by what you all are saying, and you all say that's a good thing. But further to Yomioni's point, and the one raised there by Asheke Imumar, people from the Northeast, come what may, will probably feel even more disenfranchised. There are some who've even been predicting that for the first time there could be this fear of a partition of Nigeria. Is that a real threat?
It's not a real threat. The elections will happen. People are going to be angry. There is a real threat of violence. I think in the Northeast and possibly in the South, depending on what happens, depending on the result. But by the end of this year, we're still going to have a country called Nigeria. So not just that, we're going to have a country called Nigeria as it is now, minus, of course, the issues with Boko Haram taking territories. So it looks like a real threat, but we would have Nigeria after this.
Yomioni?
Japhet is very correct. Nigerians are actually a peculiar people. We struggle so much amongst ourselves. We criticize one another. We really raise our voices. But at the end of the day, we find a way of actually staying together, which is really incredible. I believe that by the end of this year, there will still be a country called Nigeria the way it is. Of course, the new government will be, whoever wins, the new government will be under immense pressure to address Boko Haram. And funnily enough, after the election, something will change in the manner that Boko Haram's issue will be addressed. And everybody will be wondering. And
this call for a government of national unity, do you see that happening?
Unfortunately, we practice an American style of democracy, whereby the winner takes all. I really don't see APC sharing powers with PDP members, or maybe PDP members actually telling the APC guys, okay, we won, but we want you on board. Honestly, it's going to be really a tall dream seeing something like that. But whatever, like I said, whoever wins the election, the attitude or the approach towards security would change, and people will be surprised.
Are there signs of that?
Whoever wins the election has one thing going for him: the ability to show people that he is there to protect them. And that is the reason why Nigerians would turn out en masse to vote now, because everybody is tired of insecurity. Even the incumbent is actually talking about doing things differently in terms of security. So your credibility as a leader is tied to how secured we are.
All right, so there's going to be a fresh momentum. Japhet Omojuwa, do you agree?
First of all, let me say that necessity could create a situation where the incoming government would have to be accommodating of not just people from other parties, but from people from across the board. Any Nigerian who loves Nigeria has to understand that winning the elections should not be about winner takes all. We have to understand that the most essential thing in Nigeria today is unity, and I think that we must look for a way to make both, because really and truly, whoever wins the election, no political party will single-handedly solve this security issue in Nigeria. That's just true. It's just as true as the fact that Nigeria alone cannot deal with this issue. So internationally, at the level of international politics, Nigeria alone cannot deal with this issue. Internally, no single political party can deal with this issue. There has to be a coming together of all heads across political parties across the different geopolitical divisions of Nigeria to make this happen. And this would mean that after the elections, there has to be a coming together. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. But if these people love Nigeria enough, I believe that they have to understand that this has become a necessity at this point in time.
Dominique Trinquant, again, we think back to the spring when there was that abduction of those 200 girls, worldwide mobilization, the hashtag that went viral, and this feeling that, all right, the world is paying attention. France, the United States, Britain, China, all just saying they'd help. Today we see Boko Haram more emboldened than it was back in the spring. If these cross-border attacks continue with Chad and Cameroon, countries that have reciprocal defense agreements with France, does it become France's problem?
It is currently France's problem also. Going back to the crisis you were talking about, everybody was interested, but not for a very long time. And there are so many crises in the world. And the first thing that people are looking at the threat closer to the border or closer to our main interest. And last week, the problem in France showed that the problem is more in Middle East or in Baga area with Mali. And so people are focusing on that. But you are right. I mean, the problem is first for Chad and for Cameroon. And French forces are in Chad and are in Cameroon. And so this can be a problem for the French forces there, but it is first the problem of Cameroon and Chad. And because they are not able to talk and to organize things with Nigeria, my guess is that they will organize themselves, supports between Chad and Cameroon and perhaps French forces in order to secure the area between Lake Chad and the north of Cameroon, wait for the time that the election will happen in Nigeria, and see if Nigeria will be able at that time to cope with the problem.
Having a president with a new mandate, will that make things easier?
A new president or not a new president, I think that after the election there will be another policy on this security. Currently, because of the election, perhaps it's not time to talk about that, to show people killed and all that.
It's not just the Nigerians, it's also the international community that's in a holding pattern.
Yeah, certainly.
And yet, at the same time, Sheikh Mumar, Chad is very destabilized by all of this. We've seen all the refugees that have poured in.
And you have already 20,000 refugees on the border, but I think that the figure might be larger than that because there are, some ethnic imbrication between the two countries. So many people go straight to their families on the other side of the border and do not register as refugees. But I would like to go back to the army issue. There is a saying that goes in the streets in Africa that the African armies are very good when the adversary has no weapons. When they're very good at kidnapping politicians, at repressing, civil unrest, at driving the peasant out of their land. But when they are faced with another army, especially a guerrilla group, they are totally incompetent. There is a structural problem with our armies. It is not a problem of budget or equipment or even of training. But I think we need, I referred earlier to the necessity of international cooperation, especially with France, the United States, NATO, United Nations, and the UK also, because the British Army is very well experienced in that kind of situation. But on the other side, we should set up a new doctrine for the army in Africa and create special units, specialized and counter-insurgency.
Which Cameroon has, by the way. This rapid intervention force.
But it is not very, well organized up to now. And the people in the street in Africa, in the region, especially in Chad or Nigeria, they see the planes and the tank and so, but they do not understand what is the action plan to counter them. There is some of defensive reaction all the way. We must be on the offensive and chase down these groups.
Japhet Omojua has a rethink of the Nigerian army, a reform of the Nigerian army. Has that been a campaign issue?
It's not even been in the conversation whatsoever. Of course, apart from the fact that the main challenger, General Muhammadu Buhari, is talking. He has been talking about the fact that he dealt with a sort of insurgency when he was a head of state, and he can do it again. He even mentioned how he did it even in Baga, the same Baga, and he can do it again, and he can do it differently. But of course, it would be difficult for the incumbent, who has been there for 5 years, to come to say that he would do it differently, because if you've been doing it the same way and failing for 5 years, the first thing to do is to admit the fact that you failed, before you even begin to push any argument about doing anything differently. But it's not been a big issue. I personally think that the number one issue this election should be security, and then the economy, then before we begin to talk about corruption. But it's not been as big an issue as I would have loved for it to be.
Japhet, one final question. I'm sitting here in Paris, and how do people in Nigeria feel about this Je suis Charlie, I am Charlie hashtag that's gone viral this week and trumped Bring Back Our Girls? How do people in Nigeria feel about that?
There are two sides to the feeling. There is a side that is genuinely, they genuinely care about what happened, and they are united with France. And a lot of Nigerians actually tweeted Je suis Charlie, which I think is beautiful, because we are one people, we are one world, we are one humanity. There is the other side. I was really angry by the fact that the president of Nigeria and the coordinating Minister of Economy and Minister of Finance, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, sent solidarity greetings to France and did not say anything about what happened in Baga, which of course meant that a lot of people began to think that the human beings in France were being better treated. And that's not just what happened. It's not just a Nigerian thing. I mean, all over the world, people were shouting, Je suis Charlie, Je suis Charlie, when thousands had died in Nigeria, and nothing, practically, virtually nothing was being said about it. And then there is a third side that are saying, Je suis Charlie, yes, but Je suis Baga, Je suis Nigeria. I am Baga, I am Nigeria. To involve everyone, because this is not just about Nigeria. This is not just about Paris. It is about our common humanity. So it's been divided. There are people that are really interested in what happened and really concerned for France and Paris. There are people that are strictly, look, we have our Nigerian issues, let's just deal with it.
And some people who want to focus on both. Japhet Omojua, we are definitely Baga here, and we'll continue to focus on that story. Thank you for joining us from Abuja. I want to thank as well
my pleasure. Thank you.
Yomi Oni. I want to thank Dominique Trinquant, as well as Ashek Im Umar. Stay with us, because it's our Media Watch segment next. There we go, James. A new hashtag for you. Je suis Baga.
Je suis Baga.
Hello, James Creed.
Hello, first of all. And indeed, a lot of people have been making that point, Francois, that perhaps media attention focused to that extent on events in Paris was negligent of tragedies that took more lives elsewhere. Others, I've seen online others saying as well that, well, Je suis Charlie became a banner that could include, indeed, other tragedies. So I suppose it is a discussion. I had a cartoon I wanted to show you, but it appears to have now gone missing. But there were headlines such as this across the press: why did the world ignore Boko Haram's Baga attacks? Je suis Charlie. Let us not forget the victims.
That's outside the French embassy in Abidjan, I can see.
There you go. So those points were being made in the media quite forcefully in the past few days. But back to Paris, where I suppose the main focus today has been the first issue of Charlie Hebdo since that awful tragedy last week.
Did you get a copy?
I didn't get a copy. No, I mean, I don't know who got a copy, because they seem to all have sold.
I found one downstairs. Well, I was able to read it in a hurry.
In the news agency just next door to France 24, 3 minutes was how long it took at 7 a.m. this morning for them to all sell out by 7:03 a.m. So just some other images. Oh, that's the cartoon I was looking for just a moment ago. Mummy, why isn't the world standing up for us two victims of Nigeria massacre, and they're looking down from above on the crowds in Paris, shouting, "Je suis Charlie." In any case, here are more images of the queues in Paris this morning. That's, I believe, up in Abbesse. And apparently even newsagents being insulted.
Well, that's not nice.
Not the easiest day for them, perhaps. If you haven't got a copy, Francois, you can go online where, according to The National, there are copies for about 100,000 euros at the moment. I'm not sure if it's euros or dollars, but it appears that people have been buying them in bulk to sell them on. Rather cynical.
It's always people trying to turn a fast buck in a moment.
Absolutely, absolutely. More details on that later on. In any case, there's a huge amount of buzz on it.
All right, James Creedon, I want to thank you. I want to thank the rest of our panel. And thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.